What's going on, everyone? I want to take this opportunity to welcome you to an amazing fireside chat with the pros. That's right, we are talking to PR professionals. What an exciting moment, an exciting time to be here. Our panelists are here. We're ready to jump into this conversation. I've been looking forward to spending this afternoon with these amazing ladies and their expertise. And we really hope that you gain something amazing out of today's webinar. So sit back, get your notebooks, get your tea, get your wine, get your tequila, your cognac, whatever you need in this moment. Make sure you get it so that you can enjoy this fireside conversation. All right, we're about to bring everybody on. All right, welcome everyone.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Courtney, how are you?
I'm
We have
doing
two
great.
Courtneys. We have two Courtneys this
I'm also
afternoon.
doing great.
How are you
It's
guys?
usually two Jasmine, so I'm glad that you have to struggle. No offense.
I love it. Well, listen, I want to thank you, amazing ladies, for being here and being a part of this amazing conversation that we're having. Just a little bit behind the vision for this afternoon. Is I wanted to do something for my community and give them an opportunity to hear from professionals in our industry to really know the work that we do. I think PR and the work of a publicist is one of those behind the scenes jobs that doesn't get talked about often, and there's a lot of ambiguity around what does a publicist really do? What is PR? Is that really a thing? Can you get paid? Is there any money in that? So all of those things, come into place. I wanted to have a very candid conversation. So I'm so pleased and honored to introduce my colleague, an amazing team member here at VisionWorks, Courtney Sykes, who is here on screen, and she's going to introduce this panel and allow you guys to introduce yourselves, tell the audience a little bit about you. So turning it over to Courtney.
Hello, everyone. I am Courtney Sykes. I'm a mass media arts student at the illustrious Clark Atlanta University. I currently serve as the PR and special events intern here at VisionWorks, public relations firm, and I'm very excited to be here and hosting this webinar. So the purpose of this webinar is basically I want individuals to gain a better understanding of what public relations is, what does PR consist of, and what do PR professionals face on a daily basis. So I'm gonna let our guest speakers introduce themselves and just tell you a little bit about their background and what it is that they do, and then we're gonna go ahead and get started.
Well, since I'm in Atlanta too, I guess I'll go next. I'm Jasmine Lee. I am the founder and lead publicist of the Lee PR firm based here in Atlanta. I am a publicist who got into PR from being a TV news and sports reporter. So I spent a lot of time in journalism. I really love telling stories, and it's a natural transition for a lot of people who get out of journalism to get into PR. And it was just the same for me. I didn't ever want to give up on telling stories. So I really get to do that from another lens. And I spent a lot of time in sports journalism. So a lot of what we do at the Lee PR firm is sports and athletic related, and just supporting those brands or individuals. And so really excited to be here tonight.
Thank you, Jasmine, for sharing that. My name is Courtney Janu. I am from New Orleans, Louisiana. I'm currently based in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I am a public relations and strategic communications specialist of over 5 years. Currently, I serve as an account executive at a couple different places, but mainly the PR Alliance, which is an agency based in DC. We basically serve impact driven clients. And so storytelling and impact is literally at the base of what I do with everything. And I'm happy to be here with you guys.
Okay, that is amazing. Thank you both for sharing. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So the first question that I have is, what is public relations to you, and what inspired you to pursue a career in this industry?
Okay, so I go ahead. So to me, public relations is exactly what it says, building relationships with your publics, every public that you have, whether you're a client and you're trying to get visibility for your product or your brand, or just in everyday life, we all relate to different types of people and we all have stories to tell. And then, what was your second question again?
What inspired you to pursue a career in this industry?
What inspired me to pursue a career in this industry. So I always like to say I'm a natural storyteller in general. I love talking to people. I love being around people and telling those stories. And so I always knew I wanted to do some type of communications. But when I was in undergrad, I had a professor and he used to tell us all about his job and different things that he would do. But I never saw that representation coming from a PWI in the industry. So I was always like, there has to be people that look like me somewhere in this field. And so just the excitement that he had from telling his stories and things that he used to do really got me intrigued in public relations. And then once I saw the lack of people that were in the industry that looked like me in my area, I really locked in and honed in on being able to tell our stories and finding places where our stories mattered.
Yeah, I love that. And just, piggybacking off of that, and telling our story in places that they matter. For me, public relations is uh the core is about your story. It doesn't matter if your audience is, if you're working with a I'm working with a client that's a B2B, right? And their audience is mainly other businesses, or as most of us experience, public relations is in a consumer way. It's all about having control over your story. I really feel like people have minimal knowledge on the public relations industry, but what they do think that they know is someone who's gonna, spin things for you, or you're a liar, or my favorite one, you're Olivia Pope, which I'm not mad at that one. But it's it's not about creating. I always tell my clients this: it's not about me creating the perfect image for you. It's about me helping you to tailor the image that you really want, because you'll never keep up. What I think is a perfect image is something you'll never keep up. You'll last a day, and then I'll be doing more work because now I have a crisis on my hands because people are like, oh, they got you on TikTok because you're a fraud and all these things. And it's like, why? We didn't have to do all that when we could have just figured out what's really your message, what's really your story, and what audiences do we relay that to? Because newsflash, everybody is not your audience. Everybody is not going to love you. You're not going to have 100% likability rate, 100% positive sentiment. That's not realistic. But those people who you are trying to reach, those people who your story does impact, how do we properly convey that message to them? How do we listen to what matters to them? How do we listen to the messages that they are talking about and figure out how that resonates with us? And so I got inspired to get into this industry, I guess, because I realized, like I said earlier, that I could still tell stories by being a publicist and working from the public relations side. But I do believe that a lot of the things that we ultimately become passionate about and become our purpose are somewhere within us. Even if, like, let's say you want to be a speaker on stages and you're like, I'm really nervous to speak in front of people. But you probably may realize that when you do speak to people, they light up, right? Or they remember something that you said and like, wow, that was so inspirational. I really needed to hear that. So for me, I always was the person that was looking from the outside, and always looking at a situation like, I don't think we should do that. That seems like that would be a risk, or, oh, that's not right. Let's fix this. It's out of place. And I didn't, think anything of it. I just thought maybe I'm just an annoying person, honestly. But I realized that it was pieces of my passion, coming together. A publicist has to be able to have like that hawk's eye view to be able to see that's a risk. We shouldn't go do that, or we shouldn't say that, or what could that imply, and those things. So once I kind of realized that was more than just a personality trait, it was also a skill, and a skill that I, enjoyed, and I could put it together with another passion of mine that I had experience with the storytelling, and kind of went seamlessly from there.
Wow. I would underscore what both of you said. I think what the thread in all of our stories is, yes, that it is PR is a storytelling craft. It is the art of telling the story. But for me, beyond telling the story, what I found was telling the story wasn't enough. We needed to have the right people at the table to make sure that the narrative was right. Because everybody has a story, every brand has a story, every business has a story, but oftentimes, is it the right story? Is it being communicated, conveyed properly? Is there enough people at the table where it's a diverse story? It's a story that will connect. And I think for me, that's where I found my passion. I started my career in politics and government. I worked for an elected official in New York City before I started my firm 6 years ago, which is the VisionWorks PR firm. And while working in that administration, I served as the senior advisor. I served as the political fundraiser for the elected official, and a bunch of other things, right? And in that role, I was very useful. I was pulled on often in my role, but I still didn't have a seat at the table. And what was happening was there were things that were coming out of the elected official's office that was disconnected and disjointed with the people that we served. And I felt, well, if I was at the table and not just in the office and just behind closed doors, I would have had a greater impact. And that was one of the things that pushed me to make my jump to launch into my own agency. Was I needed to be at the table of the people that I worked with, not just create my own table, but I needed to be at the table. So that's why my title is Chief Executive Officer, but also Chief Communications Officer. So client facing, I'm your Chief Communications Officer, but facing this company, this firm, I'm your Chief Executive Officer. So I have a dual role. And that was strategically done so that when I work with organizations, I work with brands, I can sit at the table and have that unique perspective as a Black man in America. And I think that it's a voice. It is a perspective that is not often looked at. It's not often appreciated. However, our Black men are often the most marginalized by businesses, by brands, by cultural norms. So you've got all these businesses and organizations that fail to see things from the perspective of a population that will be greatly impacted by what they're putting out there. So I'm on a mission. I'm on a mission in PR to be the Black male voice at every corporate table, every corporate board, because I believe my perspective is a valuable perspective, and you won't get where you really want to get until you have a Black man at the table.
I absolutely agree with everyone. I really love y'all's standpoint. So we're going to move on to the next question. So PR is constantly evolving, especially with the advancement of technology and being that society is constantly changing. So what are some effective PR strategies that you've practiced within the past year?
Well, I think that strategy depends on the client, and then the strategy also depends on the goal. A lot of times people will come to us and approach us and say, "Oh, well, I want to do business," and like, we're having an exploratory call or something, like, tell me what the strategy is. I can't tell you that because I don't know your goals. I don't know your short-term goals, your long-term goals, your business goals. Do you have a business? Who's your audience? All of those things matter. And if you have somebody who is going to get on the phone with you in the first 5 minutes and say, okay, this is the strategy, you should probably hang up. Because that, even if they've done their research on you, they haven't gotten your input, right? So you need that. But I think that understanding that all media is kind of equal now is a really important thing. And like I said, I come from a school of journalism. I was trained up by, old school journalists who really believe in like journalistic ethics and sourcing and all those things. So it even is hard for me to accept sometimes, but for the consumer, social media and regular media is all media. It's all a source. They're not going to say, oh, well, I heard this, but I got it from social media, so I'm not sure. They're going to be like, it's true, So you have to think about that as you approach, your tactic. Sometimes traditional pitching and making a traditional press release is not necessary. Maybe it might be better to reach out to a journalist with a shorter note and link a social media post. Hey, everybody's talking about this. I think this would be something that'd be great for your show because my client is an expert in this, and yada yada, so on and so forth. So kind of meeting not just the audience but the journalists where they are is something that I think is very important to keep up with, not only the times but where PR is going, because everybody can connect with journalists now. It's not like 30 years ago where an athlete needs you to write the press release and get in touch with the New York Times. They could, the New York Times editor could DM the athlete. That's where we are right now. So figuring out how to stay relevant in that regard and not being afraid to try new things and get with more of the times and what the audiences that you're trying to reach are talking about, I think are really important things to keep in mind when it comes to strategy.
I would jump into to say that I believe all media is becoming equal, but I would also say that we're seeing that brand partnerships are playing a really huge role in making impact when it comes to PR. How do we connect and merge people, brands, ideas, executives, and what can be birthed out of them to drive their story and their mission, their campaigns forward? Brand partnerships are playing a huge part in the work that we're doing. And then I would stand true to say a tried and tested thing that's always going to be a part of PR is pre-planning. Having a pre-plan for your communications efforts, timeless. It's always going to matter. It's always going to work. In particular, what I've noticed is, especially some of my corporate and small business clients, that they don't think about and or they forsake is planning for risk. Doing that risk planning, putting together that risk plan, that communications risk plan, so that when a lawsuit comes, when there's some major scandal in your organization, there's a plan in place for how we respond to this. And I think for me, what I've been doing over the last 6 years is really helping entrepreneurs and business owners craft plans that are not needed in the immediate, but it's something that we can pull from if we ever needed it. Don't forsake that pre-planning. That's a tried and true tested thing. We got to get back to pre-planning. Stop being reactive in our communications and stuff, and let's put plans together.
I will say I completely agree with both of you. Sean, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was about to say literally planning for the pivot. You never know. Like you said, you never know. And with the digital age, things are changing always. So number one, and of course with layoffs and everything that we're seeing now, you never know who's going to be at what agency or what media outlet. So making sure you have strategies that are in place to where if media isn't responding or you're not getting any feedback from anyone, switching to maybe a podcast or switching to maybe IG Live, still allowing to connect the brands to allow to still allowing the brands to connect with their audiences. But just in the meantime, when you're not landing that, that good media that you want to get, making sure you're planning ahead of time.
Okay. All right, we're going to move on to the next question. How would you describe your overall experience working in PR and communications? Is there something that you wish you knew before you began working in this industry?
I can go ahead. I'll say my overall experience in working in the industry has really been um, hard work from the beginning. I feel public relations is such a wide open field to where you can literally do anything you want and go in any industry that you want. And I've kind of been fortunate enough to have experience in multiple different agencies, but starting out as an intern, I interned at a lot of different places. I went to multiple different webinars, just learning the business and always being a student to the game. So because I love learning and I love knowing having as many skills as I can in my tool belt to be able to help clients or potential clients later on down the road. The opportunities are endless, I will say. So that's something that I'm very grateful for, overall in general. And it's just getting better. It's just getting better.
I think my experience has been a little bit different because I came from a less traditional route since I switched from one career, even though they were all communication, it was both communications, but from one side of it to another. I had a transition in between because, of course, most PR, it depends on who your target is. If it's like I've mentioned earlier, if it's like a business to business where maybe your target could be more trade publications and things like that versus consumer where you're talking about magazines, news outlets that you may see day to day. But I had a transition period in learning more behind the scenes about PR because as a student I interned and had mentors who were reporters. I interned at news stations learning more about journalism, how to cover stories differently. So then in the middle of when I decided to switch careers, I had to kind of learn some basics of PR again. So, like, of course, PR professionals are trying to reach media personalities. And so having that experience of knowing what's a story, knowing when to pitch, knowing certain just terminology that I could say to reporters off the fly and they're like, oh, you get it. That has always been a skill of mine and just like, or an asset of mine on this side of it. But some things I had to go back and learn, like, okay, reporters don't talk about KPIs. PR people do. So I was like, okay, I'm needing to learn what matters here. What does that mean? Let's start there. So there was a little bit of that for me. But one of the things that I think that I wish that I knew or knew to tell people, first of all, one, everyone is not your client. Everyone is not going to be your client. Doesn't matter. It's not even about the money part. I'm just talking about simply people saying, oh, I want your help, 'cause I want to get on the news. And a lot of times, early on in my career, there are people who knew I was a reporter. They reached out when I switched over and they're like, oh, I want you to help me. I know you got the skills and experience, and they were willing to pay, but they weren't ready for PR. And I think that that's something that we have to do while a lot of people on the consumer side don't know what we do. We have to do a better job at educating people what we do in regards to what we take, right? Because if somebody is coming to us and saying, you know what, I just woke up and now I want to be an author, or now I want to be a life coach, I want to write a book, I want to, be an inspirational speaker. We are not shooting down anybody's dreams, anybody's calling. However, you starting that at 23 and maybe with 500 followers who are mainly your family or something like that, PR might not be the route, probably isn't the route for you at this point. You probably need more marketing support. How are we going to market this book? Who is going to read it? Who's going to be at your speaking engagement that you're going to be this inspirational speaker for? Because without a platform, without a history, journalists aren't interested. Outlets aren't interested because you're asking them to give you free coverage without them understanding who is watching. So they're losing money essentially if they're saying, oh, coming up next is, James Smith. I just saw your last name too. It just came out. Not picking on you. It's James Smith, and everybody and the viewers are like, I don't know who James Smith is, so I'm just going to take a potty break or something like that, right? But everybody's tuning in when they already know, right? Or you have an audience that you can bring to them saying, hey, I'm going to be on Atlanta News First. Oh, well, you got, 3,000 followers. They're going to watch our show. Sure. Well, I mean, and 3,000 is, relative, but you get what I'm saying. So understanding that everybody is not your client, and also teaching people, again, what we need to teach people more, that PR is not just about media. PR, if anything, is reputation management. I tell people that all the time. Don't come to us if you just want us to just get you on the news tomorrow. That's not going to happen. We need to take a look at the reputation. We need to figure out what are the reputation risks. And we're always managing it. To Sean's point about pre-planning, it's all about managing that reputation. You might not be able to partner with this person. You might not be able to go to this event. Well, I can't tell you what to do, but it won't be my recommendation that you do these things, because your reputation is, at the end of the day, all you have. That's a difference between athletes who come and play and you see them trending because they had a good game or they did a brand partnership or something like that, and in 5 years you never hear of them, and the ones who, like Shaq, who is always going to be relevant. Reputation management. That's the key.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next question. So, speaking in terms of a PR crisis, which can happen at any given time, at what point do you tell your clients that PR cannot help them or their brand?
So Jasmine touched on this. And that's why I was kind of laughing, because I was like, did Jasmine read these questions? Because this was actually a question that we just pulled like an hour ago.
It's the journalist mind. It's the journalist mind.
Talk about, but I would definitely say, to underscore the last question about my experience, and I'll segue into this. My experience has been, I've been a counselor, I've been an operations manager, I've been a negotiator, I've been chief of staff, I've been HR, all as a PR communications professional, because we get pulled on in so many different arenas just by the nature of what we do. So if we're working a strategy, we're mitigating a crisis, sometimes we jump into the HR department because we don't want this to turn into a all-out crisis online. We don't want the negative press connected to losing a staff member. So I've had my role fall into so many different other roles. But in that, what I realized is when a client is no longer listening and no longer allowing you to be the professional that you are, when they're not taking the strategy, taking the advice, taking the recommendations, and they think that they're just going to continue to do it their way, it's time to let them know that this PR is not for you. This is not for you. It's not going to help your brand. You don't listen. So until you learn how to listen, this is not the route you need to take. Because what's going to end up happening is you're going to end up spending a lot of dollars. And then you're going to get frustrated because you don't see the results, but you don't recognize that you don't see the results because you won't listen. So I would say when they stop listening, then it's time to tell them we can't move forward.
I completely agree with Sean. I think more than anything, when we say these relationships that we're building with people are mutually beneficial, these relationships that we have with our clients, they're also mutually beneficial. So this is a partnership with me and any client that we have. This is a partnership. So the harder I'm working for your brand, you should also be working just as hard to promote the positive side of your brand and everything that you're doing that's positive. So when we're no longer working in purpose and partnership, there's no way that we could even execute a strategy to the best of our ability. So like Sean said, you're spending more dollars, but you aren't getting the results because you're not realizing that this is a partnership rather than I'm working for you and not beside you.
I agree with you both, and I would say that PR can't save a person's brand when they don't understand that, when they aren't willing to protect their own reputation, right? So if you are going to habitually, as Sean alluded to, not take counsel, do the exact opposite, act off of emotion, basically everything that we're advising and counseling, you're deciding that you are going to overstep that, then you're not putting your reputation at the forefront. And so there is nothing that I could do to save you from you, if that makes sense. And on a personal note, more than just, which I agree, if they're not listening to you, then it's like, there's nothing for us to do here. I'm actually essentially wasted time where I could be sourcing or I could be prospecting another client who wants the help, who will make an impact, who will benefit from the exposure and wants to take the counsel. But for me, and I know that this is true for probably any PR professional, but I feel like I'm so sensitive about this because of the fact that I come from a journalism background. When you start making me risk my own reputation, then we have a problem. We might have to break up. Let's just, we could say it's not you, it's me, even though it is you. We could say whatever makes you feel better. But if journalists who I have spent time building up either a personal relationship where some of these people are my colleagues and friends that I've worked with, or just ones that I've built a professional relationship over time where other clients have, been featured on their show or things like that. And they are now thinking twice about opening emails or answering calls and texts from me because of something that you are doing, or my worst nightmare. I always say this is my worst nightmare, that I represent a client and somebody was saying, do they even have a publicist? Oh, that's just sending me to the grave. Right there, I'm like, you know what? That's it. I guess I'm not gonna have to be here anymore. I always say that. That's like a worst nightmare to me. If you have that happen to me, we may have to have a conversation to reevaluate, because it doesn't matter if the client is, if they pay every month or however your payment system is, on time, no question, never late, and it's, a huge retainer. Is it worth your reputation? Is it worth your respect? Some clients may have an issue with treating you with the respect that you deserve. Because of their perceived status or whatever the case may be. And I just feel like, I think it's really important for people to understand that it's really never worth that. It's really not.
I definitely agree. Don't embarrass me. That's my favorite thing. Don't embarrass me.
Did anybody else's parents ever tell them show out, get woe out? That's professionally, that's what I would probably be saying to them.
Married.
Because that's gonna be a no every time.
Yep.
All right. Next question we have is, how do you identify a bad client?
I think that you can identify a bad client before you even take them on. If you get clear about what are your business goals, that's first. So if you say, in my opinion, I don't think of, when I think of, my business goals, I'm not thinking of it as just the dollars and cents, because if we're doing good work and you're doing hard work, it's going to come. I think of it as, okay, who am I trying to represent? Who do I want who do I want people to say? And I brought up Olivia Pope earlier, like, I'm not trying to sleep with the president or anything. I'm just saying, like, people knew that Olivia Pope didn't play, right? So what do you want people to understand about your firm and your clients? If they are represented by the lead PR firm or by any XYZ firm, that they are this, or this is the type of, ball game that we're in. So understanding that, and then looking at the client. And again, people can take direction. It doesn't mean that somebody has to be, perfectly done. You're there to help them with the work, but understanding when you speak to them, having an introductory call, do they seem like they would even be open to or amendable to the type of adjustments that we might have to suggest that they make? That's one. Also, again, what are their goals and how does that relate to their platform? So if they have, 150 followers, but there's like, I really, my goal is to be on Good Morning America, like by the end of the year. Okay, that's gonna probably be a slow no. And so those type of things are things that you have to be mindful of. And it doesn't mean that they may be a bad client in general. It just might not be the client for you. I found that there have been people that have come to us and I'm like, I just don't think that we would be a good fit. And what I try to do is also recommend someone else who might be who I've seen their work. And I'm like, you know what, this person might be somebody who might be a good idea for you. But you have to understand, as a publicist, like Sean said earlier, you play therapist, you play manager, you play secretary. You play all of these roles to make sure that the goal is done. So you don't want to be doing that for someone who you could have seen this coming, 6 months ago before you signed this contract. You could have seen that they were going to be a complainer. You could have seen there were going to be somebody who didn't take good advice. You could have seen all of those things. So it has to be more than just what they can pay.
I agree with Jasmine. I think on discovery calls, like you said, that really shows a lot about a client. Of course, you don't see every single facet of a client in the first discovery call, but I believe there are some signs. So questions like, how fast can you get me on Forbes? Questions like, can I be on Forbes tomorrow? Or I saw this person on the interview and I want, that's my friend, so I want to be on there too. Like, how do we? And so
Not
I don't
tomorrow.
tomorrow. I don't think that's necessarily a bad client, but they may not understand what public relations is and that it takes time. And so you might just need to take a little bit more time with them to explain what public relations is and that it takes time. But also, once you explain that and they're still having that same type of mindset and not changing the mindset of understanding what public relations is, you might have to like Jasmine said, we might have to part ways. So I don't think this is a good fit. And we can go ahead and move along. Or I have somebody that might be even better for you than me.
I think what both of you said is absolutely right, and I would say it's not so much a bad client. I think it's more so of a not a good fit as a client. But I would say, as professionals, especially if you're a business owner in this industry, you got to count the costs. You got to count the costs, because as business owners and also practitioners, we make a certain level of investment into our clients, right? Sometimes there's an immediate return on investment, and sometimes the investment is there's a little bit lead time on that investment. So you got to count the cost. How long is it going to take me to get where you want to go? And do you have the skill set equipped to get you where you want to go? Or am I going to have to spend a lot of time training, developing, and building you up to where you are, which I know I do that with my clients. There are clients that I take because I'm connected to what they're doing, and I don't mind making the investment in the early stages of their development so that we know on the back end, oh, it's going to pay off. Because and that's another thing that I don't think people realize, that we can identify talent. Like there's a thing in publicists, there's a thing in PR, there's a thing in, we could see it. And I can't explain why we see it, but I know that it's a gift that people who sit in this seat have, that we can identify when something's good. We can identify when it's good but not ready. We can identify when it just won't be ready. So I think all of that is counting the cost. Is it going to be worth your investment, worth your team's time, worth the resources that you've built? Jasmine, you're an agency owner like I am. We've built resources to get our agencies to where it is. And by bringing on a client, they now have access to those resources. But we've got to be careful that they don't drain the resources, because then it puts us in trouble as business owners. So I would say count the costs.
All right. So the next question I have is, one of the most important responsibilities of a PR professional is knowing what media outlets to pitch to. How do you find relevant sources and relevant media outlets?
Well, I'm gonna put a little shameless plug. Okay. If anybody listening or watching struggles with this, I did a course with my firm called Life's a Pitch, and it was a webinar we did, and it was strictly about pitching. And I just felt like, as a journalist getting into the PR realm, I saw a need. Let's just say I saw a need for people who didn't have that journalism background or weren't maybe as seasoned PR pros to strengthen their pitching. A lot of times I found that there were stories that were good stories, or stories that could have at least gotten some kind of traction, but it's just about how you approached it, where they were like uninterested. I have Life's a Pitch available if anybody would like it. Doesn't mean I'm not going to give some tips here, but for a more extensive, if you're wondering, in that I didn't just take my experience. I surveyed journalists in markets all over the country, because I'm one person. I might have received pitches one way, but there are lots. So we talked about frequency. When do you like it? What do you want it to say? Things like that. I think that I now have gotten to the point in my agency where we've invested in platforms to be able to, find media contacts, a lot of, ones that people are familiar with, like Muckrack, Cision, Agility, things like that. Those type of platforms are what we use. However, I didn't always have that. Let me just be honest. And there are definitely ways that you can, you can only go but so far, but there are ways that you can still get placements for clients. I got plenty of placements for clients without having that. It takes a lot more time. And again, you probably only going to be able to go but so far, but you can still do it. And one of those things is, getting connected to that market. So sometimes a client would come to me and I'm like, I don't have any friends in that market. I gotta, I'm gonna have to be approaching this like blind. And sometimes I would have a friend where I'm like, okay, I could at least try to, reach out to them. But when you don't, go into those local pages. Some people like myself, they don't want everybody blowing them up, so they don't put their email in the bio. But there are ways around that. You could check usually when the station sets up the Facebook page, the journalist's email is in the bio. Or it's in their Twitter bio. Sometimes they do not mind if people DM them on Instagram or Twitter, but the biggest thing I would say to that question is make sure, if you're going to do that, do the research on what they cover. Because you want your reputation to always be pristine. You don't want to have spent all that time trying to find their contact information, write a pitch that would be good, and they don't even cover that. So they're not interested. And so the more you reach out to them, they're kind of like, okay, when I see this name come across my inbox next time, I'm not even going to pay attention. What if the next time it is something that they write about, or, you know what I mean? So making sure you're really doing that research is really important. Finding out, their times. You talk about TV. If you see them on 11 o'clock news, they're not reading it at 9 a.m. They're not even at work. They're not trying to be in their work emails. More than likely, it's got to be like that big. You know what I'm saying? So just kind of being, aware and doing your research ahead of time, I think saves a lot of time when pitching, whether you have a platform that you can send it out through quickly, or you're just kind of going one-to-one and doing it yourself. Doing that research is very helpful.
Absolutely. I will say definitely starting from the beginning, getting clear on the beat that your client is even a part of. So whether their lifestyle, whether their culture, and then you start the research from there to make sure the media outlets that you're looking for are aligned with that specific beat. Do they even care about those things? I know for me, I definitely always look at wherever the client is, absolutely looking at local TV, radio, breaking it down that way. And then whether it's regional, or then even if there's a specific type of, so for example, I have a client that deals with nursing. So nursing publications specifically, can they add value to that some type of way? Lifestyle publications, are they Black? This particular client I'm speaking of, they're Black nurses. So making sure they're aligned with Black media and health, and making sure those things are at the forefront. So just making sure there's alignment within your client and what they're speaking about. And then also the research that Jasmine mentioned, Twitter, Muckrack, Cision, Rocket Reach, literally every single type of research for finding a contact that you have done, I have done it. So yeah.
And I think I would tie that up in a bow by saying, have genuine relationships with the media. Build true relationships. If these are going to be your colleagues that you're going to be working with regularly, build those genuine relationships. I've been blessed to have built relationships in different markets. Coming from New York to Atlanta, LA, I've been able to build those genuine relationships. So oftentimes, a pitch for me is a phone call before I send the formal pitch. It's, hey, I just want to give you a heads up. I'm getting ready to send over, or someone from my staff is going to send over this, and I really want you to look at it, blah, blah, blah. But I have a relationship. And oftentimes, that's what guaranteed the placement for me, because of the relationship was already pre-existing. I'm not going in cold. And I think for building relationships, it has been being a part of professional organizations, being a part of industry events, being a part of just professional. I'm always networking. I tell anyone that wants to, even in business, you have to be a networker, a professional networker. You should be networking at least one night a week, at some type of place, meeting new people to build. So for anyone that's going to be working with the media and press, you need to be in the room where media and press are regularly, so that you can be a seen face. You can be known. And I think Queen Elizabeth said, in order for them to believe me, they have to see me. So you need to be believed, therefore you need to be seen. So I would encourage you, as a publicist, be seen. you know, People want to know who you are, because people make those phone calls. Who is so and so? How long? What? I ain't never heard of them. Are they in the industry? Yeah, they are. What they do? So, and in some, and honestly, sometimes I know one thing with VisionWorks, we're a communications firm, so we're not always pitching. A lot of our work isn't around pitching. Um, so sometimes when we get a client that's in an industry that I may not have a relationship in, they'll ask the question, "Well, who are you? Who is Vision?" And then we have to give our professional credentials, like, okay, yeah, we are established. We know who we are, and that's fine too. Sometimes you're going to have to explain who you are in a pitching moment, so that they can validate where this is coming from, and who. So, but the more years, the more experience you get, it gets better.
All right, we have one last question, and that is, what advice would you give to those who want to pursue a career in this industry?
Think again. I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm joking. No, I'm
We
really
laugh, but a piece of us is kind of like, true.
true. I tell anyone about going into any industry, in particular, if you want to be an entrepreneur, and then if you want to work in communications, I say think twice. Because I sit in a dual role as a chief executive officer of a staff, Courtney and Jacoby and all the amazing people that work on my staff. I've had to, you got to count the costs, like, as you leading people, as I'm responsible for livelihoods here, and we're building, and so it comes with a lot of pressure. I shared on my Instagram yesterday with my followers that last year my mental health took a hit. For the first time in 6 years, I had to start antidepressants, because of the pressure of building a firm, building a company, and just how much pressure it was in that last year for us. And I'm still on antidepressants, so my mental health took a hit. So you've got to count the costs, and then that's on the entrepreneurship side. On the communication side, it's just as much pressure, just as much. I have a client that's in a lawsuit with a very huge municipality here in Atlanta. And before we can even make the formal announcement, the press and media were all over the lawsuit. Before we can even craft messaging, because they didn't have messaging in advance, they found me because they knew they were getting sued. I had to prepare for that, right? So it's pressure. It's I'm up to the wee hours of the night, because we've got to get a message out first thing in the morning, because I can't go another 24 hours with this organization not saying anything. So count the cost. Are you prepared for late nights, early mornings? Are you prepared to have to run run that type of strategy in the midst of a crisis? You don't get 48 hours to think. You've often got to think same day. So I would say count the costs before entering this industry, especially if you want to do it as an entrepreneur.
I would say, first of all, uh, thank you for sharing, Sean. I love that just transparency. I think that's something that honestly in communications, that's what we try to preach. Like so many times a client is so afraid to just be real, and that's what's going to save you. Again, going back to our first question we talked about, it is the story. That's your story. There is beauty in every part of the story. It doesn't have to mean that it's so buttoned up and perfect. That's not what makes it relatable. That's not what makes it resonate with people, right? But I think that, to your point, it is pressure, and more. And I think so. One, you have to ask yourself, how, I mean, nobody really everybody would love if their life would just relax all the time, right? So I don't think most people just want pressure, just, oh, put it on me, I can't wait to just feel so stressed all the time, but you do have to ask yourself realistically, how do you do with stress and pressure, right? Like, how does that make you rise to the occasion, and then afterward you're like, whoo, that was a lot, but I'm like, I'm good? Or does it rattle you? And it's nothing wrong with, if whatever your answer is, but I think that definitely should be something that you take into account depending on what role in a public relations agency that you want to take on. There are plenty of roles in public relations that you don't, I mean, like, there are plenty of agencies where there are so many people that you don't have to touch crisis if you don't want to be in crisis or issues management. You could just be media relations, as far as, if it's pitching an event going on, or even if it's not always just fun stuff, but something that's not like, oh my gosh, this is like, I have to stay up till midnight because I can't, wait another 24 hours to get messaging out and things like that, as Sean alluded to. Or you could be, you could support so many other parts of communications without having to deal with crisis. So I think that that's something that we have to be clear on and have to think about, if we're talking about starting our own agency, or services that we want to offer. You don't have to be able to offer every single thing. I say pick what you do well and do that. Even if a client said, oh, well, do you do social media? If you don't do social media, no, I don't. And then that would just, be the answer, because you don't want to give less than excellent service just because you're trying to offer something that somebody else wants. So I definitely think that evaluating the role that you want to play as far as pressure, but most important, I've worked in communications, like I've said multiple times, and not just PR, but also in the journalism side, and both are true. Both are true in this regard. It takes up a lot of time. Their hours are not traditional. Communications is not a job that is 9 to 5 and then you're off. There are certain roles that you can play within the agency where typically, you pretty much, maybe off at like 5 o'clock, and, barring anything happening, you may be able to, go to happy hour and live the rest of your life and things like that. But there are certain roles, as you continue to climb the ladder or want more responsibility or making your own agency, where those hours are fluid. You do set boundaries with clients for sure. Don't call me at 8:30 p.m. about, something that you saw on TikTok that you thought would be a really good idea. You can send that in an email that will get responded to the next business day. But you may be up on the computer late nights trying to make a strategy, trying to make business goals, those things. So asking yourself if you're willing to give those things up. As a journalist, that was one of the main reasons why I got out, because I was not willing to give up the things that I had to give up anymore. With being far away from family, missing things, like my father got engaged, I missed that, missing big things that sometimes is a part of it. So evaluating those things and understanding what that might mean to you is really something that I think I would want the next generation or next crop of budding PR pros to think about.
And then the final thing that I would add to that, completely agree with everything you and Sean said, but the final thing that I would add is making sure, or taking the opportunity to be a student at every turn that you're able to get. Like Jasmine said, she pivoted from one profession to another. Of course, still in communications, but those skills that she learned, those soft skills, those transferable skills, things that you may not have necessarily that you're using in PR, you might be able to use these skills for different things. So making sure you're still able to, you may not want to focus on social media, but having social media in your back pocket can allow you to do those different things for transition. And even with clients, you can even It allows you to help with strategy, assist with strategy, different parts of the entire communications strategy, and not just the PR, not just the media relations portion of it. So making sure you have different tools in your tool belt that can help you contribute to your clients or just the areas of expertise that you want to help in general is the advice that I would give.
Okay, well, I absolutely love this discussion. I feel like I personally learned a lot from it. So I do want to thank you both for your participation. It was very much needed. I'm going to turn it back over to Sean so that he can give his closing remarks.
And I truly, 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 truly want to thank you, ladies, for being a part of this conversation. What an awesome evening that I got to spend with some of my colleagues. You ladies are really the best of the best. I want to thank you for joining us in this fireside chat. Hopefully, you'll come back and we could do part two. I believe that this is a tremendous help for those who just don't know about our industry, and I really just want to help. That really was. I just wanted to have a conversation where we can educate and give more advice and guidance. I want to thank Courtney. Courtney is our intern with us this semester. She's at Clark Atlanta University, and I'm so proud of her and how this webinar formed. She's part of the Public Relations Student Society at Clark Atlanta, and she hosted an event for the university. And I didn't know about it, but one of my colleagues in PR was on the panel, and he called me. He's a business owner. He called me. He says, "You know, your intern hosted an event at Clark Atlanta." I said, "No, I didn't know that." And he said it was a really good event. She did a good job. So you know what I did, right? In our next Monday meeting, I said, "Well, Courtney, you know, I heard about that event you did." And you know, she giggled. She was like, "How in the world did he know about that?" You see, we know each other in this industry and we talk. But she did such a great job. So I tasked her. I said, "Listen, you're gonna plan a webinar for us next month." Really? Absolutely. I haven't done a webinar in almost 3 years. But I said, you know what? We're going to use this great talent on our team to pull this together. And she literally coordinated this entire effort. And I'm so proud of you, Courtney. And I want to give you your kudos. Good job. Now do it again because you did good. So keep us going. So I want to thank all of you again for being here and giving up your time to have this conversation. So thanks again, guys.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciated it and just really love talking to all three of you. This is a wonderful conversation. So happy to contribute and come back anytime.
Absolutely. How can people reach you? You have a
Absolutely, yes. Instagram, I am at the THEE, so two E's, Jasmine JAZMYNE Lee. And then our business handles it at the Lee PR firm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And my email address, if anybody has any like questions, a lot of times people will even ask me journalism questions still. I'm so happy to connect people with, journalism jobs. If anybody is kind of like on the fence about that, it's Lee, so JLEE at the Lee PR firm.com.
Awesome. Courtney?
Yeah. All right. And then also, I thank you so much for having me here. It absolutely was a great conversation. And I'm so excited still to be here with you. I know it's about to be over, but I'm still so excited to be here with y'all. My Instagram is Courtney Marie. That's KOURTNEYY. So 3 Y's, Courtney Marie with 3 Y's. And then if you go to my Instagram, my email is also in there, and it's courtmarie99@gmail.com. And again, I'm always happy to be a resource for students, colleagues, anyone of the sort. So yes, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, ladies. We're going to pull you off screen and wrap up here. But once again, thank you so much.
Of course. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Have a great one.
All right, y'all. I hope you have enjoyed this afternoon, this evening, this conversation. I couldn't have thought of a better group of ladies to talk with about PR in this fireside chat. And we're gonna do this again. We're gonna do it again real soon because I think these are the types of conversations that need to happen. Next month, we will be hosting a webinar on diversity, when diversity is no longer the sexy topic in the room. So, back in 2020, 2021, everybody was talking about diversity, DEI. And now, where is it? What happened? Did we follow through on what we said about diversity? So we're going to have that conversation next month. I hope you all participate. And if by chance you are listening and you want to be a part of my exclusive VIP day, I want to invite you to be a part of that. Spend an entire day with me and get your brand to the next level. So we're hosting exclusive VIP days. You can pick your day, bring your team, bring yourself. Come spend a day with me so you can learn what you need to do to get your brand to the next level. So we're going to throw that flyer up and then we are out of here. I'll see you guys next month.